Hey, good evening. Nice to all of you who are joining us live, and of course, welcome to all of you who are going to be joining us with the recording a little later on. This is my Universal System of Energetics class, and we are on lesson 3, Subtle Energetics, the personalities of plants and people. Now, up to this point, we've represented energetics as circles, cycles, an energetic wheel. We talked about the concepts of this in the first lesson about how these are defining cycles, and we also in the last lesson applied that to both herbalism and aromatherapy. The first thing we're going to do tonight is understand that actually the cycle is not a circle; it's actually a spiral. Um, and so I want you to think about this for just a second. I'm going to explain it from the standpoint of energy and a piano keyboard. But okay, we talked about one of the cycles of the um, you know the that we're dealing with is the cycle of the year, which is one rotation of the Earth around the sun. But if you think about it, the sun itself is moving in space, and therefore, as the Earth is rotating around the sun, when it gets back to the same position it was a year uh, in relationship to the sun a year ago, it it's not in the same location in space. It's actually moved, and so the actual trajectory is a spiral pattern, not a circular pattern. And this spiral pattern of energy flow is really mathematical, and it's based on something called the golden ratio, which is this square with sides of equal dimensions, and then a b that's added onto that. So you have a and b, a plus b, and then you basically keep repeating this little pattern uh, within a pattern over and over again. And this is a mathematical ratio, and it creates this geometric pattern. And inside of that geometric pattern is created a spiral. So basically, the arc goes through here, and then into this square, and that square, and then that square, and then that square, and that square. And of course, whether you're going in, the squares are getting smaller. Whether you're going out, the squares are getting bigger. So that's really the nature of what I introduced in the first webinar of the idea of what we call nesting and stacking. That something has smaller cycles within it and is part of larger cycles outside of it. And so here you see a few pictures just illustrating the idea of these spirals in nature, such as water going down a drain, or the pattern that's created by a seashell, the spiral pattern there, or even this spiral pattern found in plants. And this golden ratio, by the way, is found through all living things. It's found all over the place in human beings. It's what that famous picture used to represent a holistic health by Leonardo da Vinci shows is the proportions of the golden mean inside the body. So understanding that there's this spiral pattern, let's talk about harmonics, which is really where you start to understand energy. So remember I said about the musical scale. Well, I remember um, years ago when I was a little kid going to see the movie The Sound of Music and hearing the song, doe, a deer, a female deer, ray, a drop of golden sun, and so forth, about the scale do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and then do, which comes back to the beginning, showing that the musical scale is circular, right? It goes in a cycle, and then it starts over again. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and then it go and so forth. Except that as you're going up the scale, you're changing position, and you're changing positions according to the golden mean mathematically. So basically, as the notes move around in a circle, by the time it's circled around, and so it starts off at the level C, and then the next level C though is in a different place, and then it repeats itself going up and comes back to the level place. And these movements from C to C to C are called octaves. And so um, a piano keyboard has 5 octaves, 5 of these cycles going on it. And they're all defined by mathematical ratios. And I'm not even going to get into the technicality of that. And of course, you see the same cycle with color. But you know, with color, we can think of it as a circle. We don't think of it necessarily as a spiral, but there is a spiral aspect because what we're seeing in color is 1 octave of light. And so at the bottom, you have red, and at the top, you have violet. But below the red, you have another octave of energy called infrared, or in other words, there's a red spectrum of energy. It's the same stuff, okay, at a lower, slower vibration. And above violet, you have ultraviolet, which is another spectrum of light energy. And we only see 1 octave of light. We can hear a little more than 5 octaves of sound vibrations. We can only see 1 octave of light vibrations. What would happen if we could actually see infrared and ultraviolet along with that? Then we would expand the number of colors we could see, the number of colors we could discern a lot by the fact that we would be seeing all of these additional vibrations above and below the frequency of light. So all of this exists on what's called the electromagnetic spectrum. So you see right there in the middle, you have the spectrum of visible light, and it's defined by a specific wavelength. And there are wavelengths that are longer, and you see the infrared, and faster, the ultraviolet. And out beyond ultraviolet is what we call X-rays, and beyond that is gamma rays. And below infrared is microwave, and below that is radio. But all of these are waveforms, moving either slower or moving faster. And they are all defined by this spiral pattern of increasing energy. In other words, there is a pattern here of circling around with energy, getting faster or getting slower, moving according to the principles of the golden mean or the sacred spiral. So here you have this. By the way, the original handouts I put up did not have this picture. I posted a new thing with them. So if you downloaded the earlier handouts, you can re-download them to get this picture. But basically, this is showing the musical scale the way it's rendered on paper. But basically, there's your 5 octaves, and the white keys are those major notes: do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and then you start over again, only at a faster vibration, going through do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, back up to an even faster vibration, and then faster vibration, and so forth, going through octaves. But there are, notice in each octave, there are actually 12 notes. There are 7 major notes and 5 sharps and flats. Well, if you went back to the visible light back here, this one right here, if you look at how color splits on a rainbow, it splits into 7 colors. On the rainbow, you have your primary colors, your secondary colors, and then you also have blue-violet. There are 5 other colors, the basic 12 colors on the color wheel, that are not represented in the rainbow. So just as you have in music, 7 major notes and 5 minor notes. In color, you have 7 major colors and 5 minor colors. In other words, the pattern, the harmonic pattern that governs music is also found in light. This pattern, like I said, is repeating itself over and over again through nature. In fact, here's what really is interesting. I read that the person who developed the periodic table of elements had a kind of a mystical experience in which he saw the elements, the known elements, laid out on a spiral. And the actual reason why it's called the periodic table is because the periodic table of elements flows in a spiral. And so even when we talk about matter, matter flows in a harmonic spiral with different elements that are like the different musical notes on repeating themselves in different octaves. So, for example, I'm not going to try to get into this, in too much detail, but you have right here, in this area right here, I could actually pull up a highlighter, but you have copper, silver, and gold. Basically, what copper and silver and gold, if I want to explain this energetically, are the same musical note in different octaves, moving up in vibration to a higher vibratory level. Copper, they all have certain common properties. All of them conduct electricity. All of them are metals. All of them are malleable. They've all been used to make coins for money. Pennies used to be made out of copper. Now they're made out of zinc because it's cheaper. But there's some differences, harmonic differences as you move up the scale. Copper tarnishes quite easily. Silver, and it doesn't hold together very well unless you mix it with another metal. Silver, you can make silver alloys, but silver is less likely to tarnish. Gold, you can have pure gold, and it holds together as pure gold, and it doesn't tarnish. So it's moving up in vibration, and these patterns are all over the place. Like sodium and potassium are on the same kind of wavelength at different octaves, and so forth. Oxygen and sulfur, nitrogen and phosphorus, carbon and silicon, and so forth. Magnesium and calcium. And this is, but because, see, there's more elements as you go out because it's spiraling. It's moving out. And that brings me to the model that I'm going to just briefly touch on tonight, the 12-element model of the Tree of Life that Royland Mortenson taught me. This is the way you'll find this model depicted almost everywhere on the internet. And this is Royland Mortenson's restored rendition of what it really should look like. And I won't get into how he discovered this, but basically this is a 12-element model. And it's also three-dimensional. This shows the relationship between these different 12 spheres or vibratory states, and the pathways represent transformation from one state to another. This is the front and back. You see the model actually has 3 tetrahedrons and 2 pyramids in it. This is the top of one pyramid. This is the top of another pyramid. Here you can see the top of the pyramid and the top of the pyramid here. And then the tetrahedrons are like a pyramid, except it's got 3 sides instead of a 4-sided base. And so there's one here, there's one here, and there's one here. And the way this model is constructed, it has 3 pillars, that is 3 vertical lines. It has 3 worlds, these tetrahedrons, the 2 pyramids. It has 12 spheres, the points on it, and 22 pathways, 3 horizontal pathways, 7 vertical pathways, 12 diagonal pathways. What this is showing over here is this upper circle is the intellectual world, the middle circle is the spiritual world, the lower circle is the physical world. And there's also a physical pillar, a spiritual pillar, and an intellectual pillar. And so what you have is you have a holographic model in here. You have pure intellect, the physical side of intellect, the spiritual side of intellect. Then you have the intellectual side of spirituality, the physical side of spirituality, the purely spiritual. We'll skip this one for just a second, come down to this one. And then you have the purely physical, the spiritual idea of the physical, and the intellectual idea of the physical. And this sphere right here represents the union of all three, intellectual, spiritual, and physical. This model again, I'm not going to get into great detail on this, but this is a model that really helped me understand energetics. So I'm going to show you a few applications of it. And then hopefully down the road, I'll be able to teach, some more on some of these deeper energetics. But these are the Hebrew names for these spheres and the ideas that they encompass. And they also could be represented this way as, concentric circles, with Ein Sof being outside of the first circle and the Malkuth being inside of the last of the 10 circles. And so basically when we were saying that, the circles get smaller and smaller this way and bigger that way because this is basically this for the next tree. So they nest and stack too. But I just wanted to show you this really quickly because this is the emotional map I use in my emotional healing situation. And this came to me, in fact, all the models I'm going to show you right here came to me as I was pondering the Tree of Life. And I was actually trying to understand it in relationship to the traditional system of chakras. And one day I woke up with quit trying to make the chakras fit the Tree of Life and make the Tree of Life fit the chakras. And as soon as I did that, I saw, well, we have three worlds. We have a head world, a heart world, and a physical world represented by our head with our housing our brain. Then we have a chamber in our chest that houses the heart and lungs, which is the rhythmic vibrating part of our body, the home of our spirit, emotional energy. And it's separated from a third chamber, our abdominal cavity, which houses our digestive organs and liver and so forth, which represents our physical world. And within those worlds, you have you have intelligence represented by the third eye, and then you have your left brain and right brain, which represents the physical and spiritual side of intelligence. Then you have your throat, which is the bridge between the world of the head and the world of the heart, and is also the intellectual aspect of our spiritual / emotional world. Self-expression, voicing, or speaking, in other words, is the spiritual idea of intelligence. And then you have your heart and your thymus, or you might say your immune or lung energy, represented, one being the part that is the spiritual part, the heart, the other one being the physical part, the immune system and the breath of life. And then you have the solar plexus, which is the center of gravity in the body, where the three meet, and where you become centered, where you are able to pull all these different aspects of yourself together. And then you have the liver and pancreas energy, which are the physical and the physical idea of the physical body, the liver, the part of us that is in charge of living, of protecting our life, and the pancreas, which is the spiritual side, which draws in the yin side draws in. So the right brain draws in information. The heart draws in emotional, spiritual energy. The pancreas draws in physical sustenance through digestion. On the other side, the left brain is the logical brain. It sorts and helps to reject bad ideas. The thymus governs the immune system, helping to reject what's not good for us. And the liver does a similar thing on the physical level of the body. And then the ones going down the middle help us maintain equilibrium. And when I saw that, it was like boom, boom, boom. I mean, like it took like 10 seconds, literally 10 seconds. And in my mind, it all just went boom, boom, boom and fell into place. And I started testing this model, and it proved to be extremely accurate in practical use. And at the same time I saw that, I also saw the model of the senses. You have 2 eyes, 1 nose, 2 ears, 1 mouth, 2 hands. Okay, so basically your eyes are the doorway to the intellectual world. Your ears are the doorway into your emotional world. Your sense of touch is your doorway into the physical world. The nose is actually both intellectual and spiritual. The nose knows. And the nose actually is connected to taste in the mouth, as well as to the fact that it is the sense that is most linked to memory. And then I realized the mouth was kind of the center of the senses because to ingest something is to make it a part of you. So just when you take in through the sense of taste, you're actually making something a part of your being. And the sense of taste uses the nose as well as the physical sense of texture as part of how it functions. And then I just the other 2 things just came to me. We also have intuition, which is information that comes from a higher source outside of us, and instinct, opposite that, which is information that's pre-programmed into our body to help us survive. So I added those 2 senses, and this tied in. Now I'm just showing you how much I've seen energetics everywhere. This model tied in to something in what's called Rayid iridology, which is a personality model of the iris. And basically, you have 3 basic types. There are actually 4 types because the 4th type is a combination of the jewel and the flower. So the jewel and the flower are the yin and the yang. The stream is a balanced type, and the jewel is a mental type. They think, and they primarily learn through their eyes. So there you have a visual learner who prominently uses their brain to process the world. You have the emotional type, which is the flower type, which processes the world through their emotions, through their feelings, through their heart. And their primary learning mode is to listen, to hear. And then you have the physical type, which primarily learns through touch and movement. And they are the ones that learn best by hands-on. And I also found you can tell, which part of your brain the person is accessing by asking them a question and watching where they shift their eyes as you answer, because they'll shift them upward if they're visualizing, over to the side if they're thinking in words in auditory communication, and down if they're going to connect with physical sensation, with their gut world, their instinctive gut world. And of course, whether they're accessing the more open yin side or the more closed yang side depends on which direction they look. And all this stuff I've tested, it's all extremely valid. It really works, and it's amazing how this fits into the energetic patterns. Now, the reason why I brought all that up is because we're going to get into this idea of energetic personality, and there are a whole bunch of personality models out there, and typing. All of them are energetic in nature. If you really look at them, I encourage you to study several of them, because I find that constitutional typing patterns, energetic personality types, is really useful. So a constitution, and I'm going to tell you why this is important a little bit later, includes your physical appearance, facial features, because I showed you how the face actually reflects the body earlier. In fact, let me just go back to that. If you think of a person who is really brainy, we would think of them as an egghead, which means that the top part of their head would be bigger than the bottom part of their head because their primary energy is up in their brain. A person who's more of an emotional, heartfelt person has a more round face because their their head is widest through the area of their nose and their ears, showing their more emotional nature. And a person who's more physical in their aspect of life typically has a larger jaw. You'd think of somebody who's like a really physically strong person as not only having a physically strong body, but having a very strong, prominent jaw down by the mouth and so forth. And this again relates to the idea that the fact that who we are energetically is written all over us. And so it's not only written in the way our body is, it's also written in the facial structure. So the shape of your body, your facial features, the various strengths and weaknesses you have in the systems of your body, and the tendencies you have to disease are all part of your constitution. But so is your primary learning mode, how you take in information, your temperament, that is your inherent way you react to the world and process the world. Like I said, that you have people who are more mental processors, people who are more feeling oriented processors, and you have people who are more let's get it done thing, and also how a person expresses themselves, because you have visual communicators, auditory communicators, kinesthetic communicators, and then you have crosses between that relate to the other senses as well. So this whole subject is fascinating, and I apologize that all I'm really able to do in this webinar is introduce the idea to you and hope that you will look at this more deeply. So here are some of the constitutional typing systems that I've looked at over the years: the Western 4-element type, which we're going to be talking about tonight, the Chinese 5-element type, the Ayurvedic tridoshas, iridology. Iridology is one of my primary constitutional typing systems. Also, I learned a system of glandular body typing and actually expanded on it, which is something one of these days I will do a class on. There is also a brain typing, which uses 4 different characteristics that have 2 poles, and so that makes for 12 types. Well, actually, no, it's more than 12 types, but it's basically 4 times 2, yeah, because you have different combinations of those. But that's a really interesting thing. There's question. There's also something called the Engram, which my friend Kim is really big on. Anyway, so there's your Chinese constitutional typing with the Chinese 5 elements, and I've used this a lot. This is one of the ones I've studied, but we're not going to get into that one tonight. We're going to look at the traditional Western one. Now, in talking about constitutional typing, like when I was learning to do glandular body typing, I realized there are people who are classic types of each type, and then there's people who are mixtures. So it's like there's every shade in between that you could imagine. So the purpose of constitutional typing is not to put people in boxes. It's not to label people. It's not to look at people and go, oh, they're like this, therefore they must be XYZ. Everyone is a unique blend of their own personality characteristics. Nobody is exactly like anybody else. We're all different. We're all unique. We're all like snowflakes. There's none of us, no one is exactly the same as anyone else. So what you're doing is you're using this to help you understand yourself better and using it to help you understand other people better, not to judge them, but to understand them. This understanding has, studying this has been really helpful for me, especially when I learned about the different learning types, because we think that everybody sees the world the way we do. But our Constitution actually creates a filter through which we perceive the world in a unique way. We, a visual type is primarily taking in information through their eyes. It's that, yeah, they can hear and they can touch and they can do all that, but the way they process information is they pull it in visually and they express it auditorily in words. And they tend to be more methodical in the way they reason things out. Whereas a person who takes things in through their ears, that's a different way of understanding the world. It colors what you perceive if you're an auditory learner. You can still see, you can still touch, you can still have all the other senses, but your primary way you are learning is that way. So, and then of course there's the kinesthetic learner. So as an example, I had a stepson and he was a kinesthetic learner. He had a kinesthetic type pattern. And so he was asking me what the odometer was on the car, and I was trying to explain it to him, and he goes, "Oh, I can't understand it." So knowing he was a kinesthetic learner, when we got home, I got a toy car, and I set up little markers represent the miles, and I showed him how the little toy car could travel this far, and then this far, and then this far, and then I explained how the little odometer would kick over each time it passed one of those things. I drew that on a piece of paper, but I was using a concrete, hands-on thing, and he got it. If you understand, this kind of thing, you can communicate people with better. You could understand that they don't see the world the way you do, and you can learn to get inside other people's heads and get their perspectives without going crazy because they don't see the world as you do. And I really like this for understanding when I would have people working for me, who's going to be suited to what tasks. Because again, we don't all have the same set of innate talents and abilities. And some of us are really good at detailed work and some of us aren't. And so we all have our unique combination of things we're strong at and things we're not strong at. And in fact, Emerson said that every strength has a weakness and every weakness has a strength. Because if you make something strong in one direction, it makes it weak in another direction. So everything you have as a strength also has a corresponding weakness. And everything you have as a weakness means somewhere there's a corresponding strength. And so when you understand that, you can be not only kinder to yourself, more understanding yourself, understanding, hey, this is easy for me and that's hard for me, but understand that for someone else, that thing that's hard for you is easy for them, and the thing that's easy for you is hard for them. This has helped me so much in understanding and getting along with people. And so we're just going to touch base with it with the 4 personality types in using the Western 4-element model. I'm going to concentrate on this one because this one's very simple and very straightforward. This model uses 2 axes of personality based on the hot and cold, wet and dry. The hot and cold represent the dichotomy from people who are very assertive, even to the point of being aggressive, outgoing, in your face kind of people, to the colder, more withdrawn thing of people who are more quiet, more observant, more passive, more introverted, calmer. So, yeah, and of course, you can exist anywhere along that spectrum. You can be a very outgoing, very dynamic, very assertive, or you can be very quiet, passive, shy, etc. And any mixture of those in between. The other orientation has to do with people who are more flexible in their personality and more oriented towards the emotional side of caring for people, meaning they'll adjust themselves and what's going on to accommodate other people and make room for them and be kind of understanding, compassionate. And people, on the other hand, who are more rigid, who are like, let's get the job done. Okay, we've got a job to do. Let's get the job done. Um, uh, that this actually is a right-left dichotomy politically, because when you see people on the right say your facts don't care about your feelings, that's a task-oriented objective. What's most important is that we get the job done, that we find the truth, that blah blah blah. On the other side is no, we got to take care of people. What about these poor people who feel left out? Blah blah. This feeling of more like people matter more than things. Well, the truth of the matter is that you have to have things and you have to have truth and everything to help take care of people, but you know, in other words, there's a mixture of those two things, and we need people who can get the job done, and we need people who can help people who are compassionate. So this creates the 4 personality types that are associated with air, water, fire, and earth. And I've run into a whole bunch of different personality typing systems that all basically are using the same concept that's found in traditional Western medicine, but they don't call it that. And I like these other systems because they add an understanding to the words sanguine, phlegmatic, choleric, and melancholic, which are 2 limiting in their connotations to really get an idea of what these personality types are. So let's start with the air personality, which is a flexible, people-oriented, but outgoing, assertive personality type. There's an animal typing system that calls these the otter, with the idea that they're playful and social. In a relationship type model that was created for men, but also has been adapted for women, they're the magician. They're the one who dazzles everybody. They're the life of the party. They're the person who likes to get out in front of people and entertain them and make them happy. And they're good at this because they're, number one, sensitive to the people around them and what they need, but they're also assertive enough to go out there and want to be seen. And so in order to be seen, they've got to be funny and interesting and everything to influence other people. So the DISC is actually a business typing adaptation of this model. I took when I was in a business training program, and they're called the influencing person. So in business, these people make good salespeople because a salesperson has to be sensitive to people's needs, and they have to be able to also be outgoing and assertive to try to get the sales. There are also people who are good at being entertainers, or anything that puts them out in the public eye where they have to, adapt to things. In the RAID model of iridology, they would be a shaker or a flower that was extroverted. But their basic personality characteristics is they're outgoing, friendly, they're a networker, they're this kind of loose, fun person. They typically have a wide circle of friends. I know a couple of, I'm friends with a sanguine type. He is always like making social connections everywhere. Very charming. By the way, in terms of family position, you're more likely to be this if you're the youngest person in the family because you are used to getting attention. You're more likely to be choleric if you're the firstborn, although this is not true. I mean, 100%, but there's just statistically. Now, the water personality, which I am, is my primary nature, the phlegmatic. Um, in the animal type, they're likened to the golden retriever. Why? Because dogs are loyal. They're faithful. They will take a lot of abuse and still love you. So in the relationship type, they're the lover, the person who is really caring, really willing to bend to get along with people. In the disc system, they're the compliant personality, the people who will do what they're supposed to do, follow the rules, etc. In Rhea, they would be a flower or shaker that's introverted. They're caring, they're loyal, they're empathetic. These are people who make good counselors, who are good listening to people, who are good in jobs where they have to care for other people, or maybe in customer service where they have to put up with angry, rude people who are upset and they need to solve their problems, right? And they are flexible and more passive in terms of not feeling a need to assert themselves so much. So they're a people-oriented, more quiet, reserved personality, more introverted. Now the fire person is the choleric, which sits opposite of the water personality. And the choleric personality in the animal type is associated with the lion. They're the king of the jungle, a very proud beast. They're called the warrior type in the relationship type. They're a dominant type in the disc system. They would be a jewel or stream extroverted. These are dominant, assertive, outgoing people. These people are very good at getting the job done. Their weakness is that they can run over the top of people somewhat in trying to get the job done. Whereas the phlegmatic personality is going to maybe fail to get the job done because they're too concerned about the people. So the phlegmatic has a hard time asserting boundaries. The choleric has an easy time asserting boundaries. You want a choleric general, okay? If you want to win a war, you don't want a phlegmatic general. You need a choleric general. You need a guy who's decisive, strong leader, ready to do what it takes to get the job done. And then you have the earth type, melancholic, which makes, go back to the picture I had there with the little fingers, the sad type. That's really not the best representation of melancholic, even though melancholics are more prone to depression than the other types. That's not the dominant thing of what makes a person melancholic. I like the animal type explanation, the beaver, because these are people who quietly get the job done and pay attention to the details and are very good at working quietly by themselves. And the relationship type, they call them the king and queen. They're a more passive, task-oriented personality, and the DISC system says they're steady. Okay, this is the person that you want to hire if you need an assistant that you can give assignments to, and they will see that they're carried out and follow them through and make sure they're done right. They're steady, dependable, and reserved. So just quickly, you have here the fire type, logical, organized, outgoing, assertive, aggressive. They tend to be egocentric, ambitious, pioneering, strong-willed, forceful, good positions of management or where decisiveness and action needs to be taken place. The caloric strengths are getting things done, being the leader in a big system. That is provided you have a balanced caloric. If you have a caloric who's too imbalanced, they're a dictator. They're a ruthless dictator. But if you have a good balanced caloric, they've got enough of the ability to recognize that they need other personality types that they can work with them and get the job done. In excess, this becomes dictator. So their weaknesses are they can be overly critical and insensitive to other people's needs. What they need to learn is to listen and take feedback from other people who they're leading so that they can make better decisions instead of just deciding themselves. They also get bored with repetitive tasks. That's why some people who are really powerful entrepreneurs, as soon as they get one business started, sell it and then go start another one, because they don't want to have to sit and manage it after they've gotten it going. They're good at getting the thing started, but they're not good at keeping it going. And because they tend to be more dominant, they have a harder time if they're in a position where they have to follow somebody else's leadership, which is interesting because they make good military officers, but they have to learn to overcome the weakness of being willing to follow orders within the chain of command. All right. By the way, I used the AI to make these graphics, so I could use a happy person with an otter to get the idea of the type in there. So the magician, the outgoing, creative, action-oriented, pioneering person, the entertaining, life of the party people, influencing other people, have a magnetic personality, are good at persuading other people, very optimistic, very social. Any position where they require interfacing with others, like being the master of the ceremonies or being an entertainer, or I mentioned a salesperson. Sanguines make excellent adventurers, world travelers, entertainers, teachers, salespeople, anything which requires them interfacing with other people, being out there and interfacing with other people. Their weaknesses are they can be very disorganized, very flighty, and very undependable, because they'll kind of go with which way the social current is taking them. That's kind of the airy part of their disposition. So they lack the skills of the beaver melancholic. Understand? They are opposite the beaver melancholic type, which is good at getting things done. They're not so good at getting things done. If you're sanguine and you want to hire someone who's beaver melancholic type who you can delegate to get the little tasks done, that's going to be really helpful, because you're easily sidetracked and can have a hard time following through and getting things done. But you got to recognize that's your weakness and compensate for it. Now, the phlegmatic type is the lovers, passive, nurturing. These are the people who are going to really care about other people, be very loyal, be the person that you can go to and talk about your troubles, and they're going to listen, and they're going to be empathetic, and they're going to care about you. They can be resistant to change, even though they're very compliant with other people. They themselves actually are likely to have to really think things through before they change, because they tend to be very stable within themselves. These make excellent healthcare workers, counselors, teachers, caregivers, anything where they have to interface with people and be supportive and helpful to others. Their biggest strength is they can tolerate large amounts of abuse in relationships and remain loyal. Like I said, they're the person who can handle a customer service job where people get angry and are yelling at them, and be patient and not lose their temper in talking to them. You put a caloric in a position like that, and they're going to blow up and yell at your customer or whatever, and it's not good. And like I said, they're great caregivers. Any position that requires, caring for others. A lot of the people I've observed in natural healing are phlegmatic types. The problem with phlegmatic types is they have difficulty standing up for themselves. So a lot of times it's interesting. A lot of these people, they're afraid to charge money for their services. They have a hard time turning their gifts into a business because they They sometimes don't say what needs to be said. So you're in a relationship and you're always trying to, you're a people pleaser. You're always trying to please the other person, whatever. But sometimes you don't say the things that need to be said because you're not willing to engage and deal with the contention, of conflict and see it through. So you can over tolerate abuse to the point that you're an enabler. You're allowing people to be abusive without you being willing to doing something to stand up for it. And that's opposite the choleric. So by the way, phlegmatics tend to attract cholerics in relationships, and sanguine people tend to attract melancholics. So I got the beaver superimposed in there and the person who's working quietly at their desk job. Logical, organized, efficient, attention to detail, get the job done. They can be, now on all these types, you have also the idea of right, left brain, whether they're a more creative type or more logical type, which is going to also manifest how this expresses itself, whether it expresses itself artistically or in another more practical way. They tend to over worry, often be, they can be neat, they can be accurate. They can do things like my son is a melancholic type, and he programs computers, which you have to pay attention to every teeny little thing inside the program. And he's very in terms of proofreading the newsletters and adjusting the layout and trying to make everything just exactly right. He's really good at that, but he can get so caught up in it that it takes him too long to do it because he's overly attentive to the details sometimes. So if you want someone to be your accountant, this is a good type because they can work with numbers and figures and be accurate, and they can work by themselves. My son David, even when he was 3 or 4, he could sit by himself and play for an hour or two with Legos and quietly and not bother you at all because he has that kind of personality. So good at detailed work, can work with a minimal amount of supervision, good at anything that requires precision, such as engineering, computer programming, or accounting. They can be overly sensitive and have difficulty speaking up for themselves. They can also be overly rigid and need to learn to be a little more flexible. And they can struggle with perfectionism, trying too hard to get everything right. So here's that quote that quotes I mentioned from Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay on compensation. He says, in the animal kingdom, the physiologists have observed that no two creatures are favorites, but a certain compensation balances every gift and every defect. The good are befriended even by weaknesses and defect. Every man in his lifetime needs to thank his faults. Now, that's an interesting statement. As no man can thoroughly understand a truth until he has contended against it, so no man has through acquaintance with the hindrances or talents of men until he has suffered from one. In other words, if you can't recognize your own weaknesses and befriend your own weaknesses, you cannot see the strengths in other people. And you can't see why we really need each other, because we all have these different gifts and talents, and it takes many of these different kinds of people with different gifts and talents to make the world work. It's like an ecosystem. The more diverse the ecosystem, the stronger the ecosystem is. In any kind of organization, the more different types of people are within that organization working together, the stronger it is, because you've got more diversity that is tolerated and lovingly accepted than elsewhere. And I'm talking about everything, all these different temperaments. If you're phlegmatic, you'll often really dislike cholerics, but you don't understand. Without cholerics, a lot of things would not get done. And so learning to see your own defects and then understand the strengths of the other is actually what helps you move to get along. Then he says, our strengths grow out of our weaknesses. Everything has two sides, good and evil. Every advantage has its tax. I learned to be content. In other words, everything that you're good at means you're bad at something. Everything you're bad at means you're good at something. And not only that, but as you're struggling to overcome your weaknesses, that's how you become stronger. So now I want to close this section by talking about probably one of the most interesting concepts in this whole thing we're discussing tonight, which is the idea of manifest versus unmanifest reality. And this is what Royland taught me. Okay, you have white light coming in, and all of the colors of light are present, all the frequencies of light that make all the colors are present in white light. When there's something that vibrates in harmony with the frequencies that make green, which are, the yellow and blue frequencies make the color green, those frequencies of light are absorbed by that object. The red light is deflected away to our eyes. So we see the object as red, but we see it as red because it vibrates disharmoniously with red. It does not vibrate in the frequency of red. It actually vibrates opposite, in the opposite frequency, because those are the frequencies it's absorbing. The red is what it manifests, what it reflects back to us. But its true nature, what it resonates with and what it's absorbing, is the wavelengths of light that create green. Now, if you're doing color therapy, what this means is, if I need more of the vibration of green, if I wear red, I'll absorb more green. But if I look at green, I'll also get more green. So if I have something green in front of me or put a green light on me, that will give me green. But if I wear red, I'll actually get more green because I'll be deflecting the red and absorbing the green. But this is true with personality because, like Emerson said, every strength has its weakness, every weakness its strength. Everything we see having a manifest nature is actually has an inward nature that is the exact opposite of it. We all have this duality living inside of ourselves. For instance, I figured out a long time ago that people who are always boasting and acting egotistical actually have poor self-esteem, because someone who had a really good self-esteem has no need to boast to anybody. They're boasting, that's their manifest reality, in order to try to cover for their insecurity, which is their unmanifest reality. And that's always the case. And that's why if you're working with personality, you're never treating the manifest reality. You're trying to understand what's really going on inside behind that manifestation, work with that. Now, this brings us to the whole idea of subtle energetics. You don't become a musician by learning the musical scale, and you become a musician by playing music. You become a musician by developing the ear and the talent and everything. And you have, in a symphony, you have all kinds of instruments playing all kinds of musical notes that are combining together into this very complex sound that is playing out over time. Same thing's true if you're going to talk about color. A lot of my uncles were painting contractors, and I worked on a job where they had to hire someone from Europe who'd been trained in Europe who restored murals on walls. He could patch the wall and then he could repaint the picture back in between it. And he could just look at a color and mix it. He understood color like amazingly well, and the form. So you're not going to be a great painter by understanding the color wheel. You're going to have to get the experience of working with color and the feelings of color and all this kind of thing. Same thing would be true if you're a dancer, right? The movements, the dance steps, okay? So when we talk about this, these basic principles of energetics play out like you are a symphony. You are a symphony of these vibrations, a unique combination of all of these energies. You are a unique painting, a unique piece of art that has numerous colors and shades. You will see inside of you aspects of all 4 personality types. You will see in others aspects of all 4 personality types, all blended in different ways, along with a whole bunch of other little intricate things that are all blended together. What you're trying to do is get a feel, like the artist has the feel for the painting, the musician has the feel for the music. You're trying to get the feel for people. And from that feel you get of people, understanding this complex blend of energies that makes that person, you are going to use that to help match that with the personalities and signatures of plants. So this is the model I use for healing, which is that most people viewed healing as you identify a disease, which is an imbalance going on in the body, and you give them a remedy to balance it. However, that doesn't work because you're missing 2 things that allow you to figure out the right remedy. If you're just doing this, you're going to be treating symptoms you're going to be treating the manifest reality and not the unmanifest cause. You're treating what you see on the surface, not what's underneath it. To find out what's underneath it, you have to add 2 more things. You have to look at the person who has the disease and what is their constitution. What are they like? What is this person like who has this disease? What are their strengths and their weaknesses? What are they where are they inherently in their body strong, and where are they inherently in their body weak? Where are they inherently strong in their personality, and where are they inherently weak in their personality? That's constitution. So I just went through one system of constitutional typing. And all of those constitutional types are prone to different disease patterns. For instance, phlegmatic are prone to respiratory congestion, lymphatic stagnation, earaches, all these kind of immune problems because they have an overly tolerant immune system. Their immune system doesn't stand up for them because they don't stand up for themselves. So they tend to get sick easier from infection and are actually more prone to getting cancer than any other type. Whereas the cholerics, they're prone to inflammatory diseases because they are always hot. They're always aggressive. They have an so things like liver problems and they're the type A personality that's more prone to have a heart attack. Okay, so when you look at the constitution, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at, here's this person. Now, what's going on in the environment of their life? How are they eating? Are they exercising? What toxins are they being exposed to? What's going on in their relationships and their work and everything? From that, what you get is, okay, let me give you just a real practical example here. Let's say you have a person who has, because I was trying to write this in the book I'm writing about all this right now. There's a gene that helps regulate a process in the body called methylation. Methylation is used in the maintenance of mood, and methylation is also used to help detoxify the liver. So let's say that you're genetically deficient in methylation, which means that this particular pathway of liver detoxification in you is kind of compromised. And you go to work in a factory where there are chemicals around. And there are 9 other people who work with you. But you're the only one who has this genetic weakness. And some of those chemicals are detoxified by methylation. You're going to get sick and they're not. Because you have a constitution that can't tolerate that environmental stress. You know, always the disease is a result of the constitution being unable to resist the environmental stresses being put on it. And the disease symptoms are the effort of the body to compensate. So the symptoms are not the quote unquote disease. The disease is the difficulty the body is having coping with the environmental influence it's under. And the disease is the imbalance in the system of the body trying to compensate for the problems. So the symptoms are not the enemy, they're the compensatory mechanisms. That's what's manifest, is the mechanisms that are turning on in the body to try to compensate for this problem. What is the remedy? The remedy is what restores balance between what's going on in the person's environment and what's going on in their constitution. Now, there's two basic kinds of remedies. One is you change the environment. So you get the person so they're not working in the factory around the chemicals anymore, right? That's one way. Or the other one is you strengthen the constitution. You give them folate and other methyl donors that increase their methylation ability so that they can better withstand the environment. I hope that that's all very clear. This is actually the model for the Strategies for Health training course I'm putting together. It's all built on this. And I am going to do a free webinar on that in January. So you might want to watch for that. So here's what Matthew Wood says. And this was, when I read this in his book, Seven Herbs, Plants, and Teachers, like a light bulb went on in my head. Every healing plant, mineral, or animal is the embodiment of a conflict in the environment which has been reconciled. In other words, this plant has stresses too. It's in a dry environment, a hot environment. It's like, or it's like this bristlecone pine growing high in the mountains, exposed to all these elements, and it's basically has to learn to cling on for dear life, you know? And so the plant has this energy that gives it the strength. That energy is its personality that gives it the strength to resist those environmental influences. So the idea is that you give the remedy to the person, the plant that teaches their constitution how to resist what the environment is throwing at it. That's energetic herbalism. You're not trying to treat the symptoms, i.e. the disease. You're treating the person by giving them a greater capacity to resist or cope with or deal with the things going on in their life that are stressing their personality and their body. I hope that makes some light bulbs go on with you. The idea is that all illness is a lack of wholeness. There is some sort of inner or outer conflict that is making it difficult for the person to adapt to the environment or situation they find themselves in. Or it may be an internal crisis they can't resolve, something going on inside of them emotionally that they can't resolve. It is the reconciliation of that conflict, the restoration of harmony where there is currently disharmony, to restore harmony, which is the ability for things to move smoothly together rather than with friction and conflict. It is that reconciliation which restores health, brings back to wholeness. So plants express their personality through what we call signatures. So when as we in human beings, we take on a certain form. We have 5 fingers and 5 toes on each side of our body. We have 2 arms, we have 2 legs, we have a trunk, we have a head, we have a specific shape. And Even when we're forming in the womb, we take on that shape and then we just get bigger. That's not true of a plant. A plant has a certain form, but its shape is not fixed. Its shape is adaptable. We express our personality not through our shape, even though there's an aspect of shape that is involved in constitution. But the primary way we express our personality is how we act, how we move, speak, and behave in the world. A plant doesn't move, it grows. And how it grows and where it grows and what it's dealing with as it grows is called the plant's gestures. And the plant's gestures are the equivalent of human personality traits. And what you're matching up in this is you're matching up qualities of the plant that go along with qualities of the person to find the right remedy to fortify that person and to give them the ability to cope with what's happening in their lives. And you do that by recognizing signatures. So really quickly here, some basic plant signatures. For example, if we're doing yin and yang concepts. A plant that's more yang, more fiery, is going to have more rigid structures, more dry, compact structures, bolder, more fiery colors, a more prickly, thorny nature, a more rapid growth. In other words, it's a more of a choleric plant, right? The choleric personality is present in the plant in terms of its rigidity of structure, not its rigidity of how it behaves with other people. It is bold colors in its prickly kind of irritable, angry nature. It's rapid growth. It's like that entrepreneur wanting to get in and blah, 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 but also it's more rapid seasonal decline. Whereas something that's more yin, more phlegmatic, is going to be more flexible, juicier, more softer colors, a more smooth, soft nature, growing slowly and enduring longer, having that more patient quality. You see the analogy? So, for example, lilies are more yin. They're they've got these nice, uh, showy, soft flowers and the soft colors, and they're associated with, uh, you know, femininity, mothering. A lot of the flower essences that are made from these lilies have that kind of quality to them. Whereas the sunflower grows really fast. It grows up in the fall, later in the season. It's prickly, it's very rigid, it's very rough and coarse, and it's much more showy in its colors. So it's a much more yang energy. The Madonna lily or sago lily flower essence in the picture here on the right is for a lack of mother-infant bonding. It helps with people who never got the nurturing they needed in childhood to get the feeling that there's a divine mother energy that's there to take care of them and to nurture them. Whereas the sunflower is for a problem with father energy, where a person has an imbalanced relationship in their uh, relationship to the the father archetype, and as a result of that, they don't have a well balanced ego structure, and it helps they move from being self-effacing to boasting and being grandiose, and they need to find a balanced sense of who they are, who they're manifesting to be. So you see the kind of yin and yang nature of those. And of course, if you look at the four elements, it's a similar kind of thing. You know, water is going to have watery, juicier, shadier, moister, plants, whereas fire, more colory plants, brightly showing sunlight. Earth plants having deep roots firmly connected to the ground, harder, more woody structures. Trees are more earthy than wildflowers growing in a meadow. One is more fiery, the other one's more earthy. Air is expresses itself in flowery, loosely connected structures, lacy structures that are open to the air. And also you may find ballooned uh, uh, plant parts or plant parts that actually have air pockets that are enclosed inside them, chambers that have air. So for example, here is on the one side a more watery plant, purslane as a garden weed, which is juicy and succulent and has a kind of a cooling, moistening energy. On the other side, you have the sulfur plants in the mustard family that often grow in the early spring. They grow very fast. They're very pungent. They have this sulfurous quality to them. They're more fiery. Or you have the oak tree, which is very earthy, very solid. Or you have things in the Umbelliferaceae family, the parsley family, that have these loose ferny-like leaves and these umbels of flowers that are spread out to the air and then often have air pockets in their roots and stems or hollow stems. So they enclose the element of air. And this is the kind of thing you're looking at in signatures. So I want to close, and I'm sorry this one's so long, but there's so much I wanted to share. So hopefully that you can do this. I want to talk about iris constitutional patterns and some flower essences just to show you how this relates. This is the flower eye pattern, or it's also called the polyglandular subtype. It's a weakness of the glandular system, but this goes along with the tendency to have a more emotional learning by auditory learner, visual communicator personality. And Denny called it the flower because it has that relationship like to a daisy. But anyway, what we're going to start with is the hydrogenoid subtype called by Denny Johnson in Radiology, the Ring of Harmony. We're talking about these little white, puffy, cloudy things out at the periphery of the iris. People have this, and this is someone who has them here. They're just discolored out here in this periphery. These people have high ideals. They're heightened empathy. This is a sign of a more phlegmatic personality tendency. They tend to feel responsible for fixing the problems of other people, even maybe for fixing the problems of the world. They have difficulty with personal boundaries, meaning they have trouble saying no. They tend to be overly compensating people pleasers. They have can have difficulty, you know, saying no when they should say no, and they also can be overly empathetic. That is, they can feel like they're responsible for other people's problems even when they're not. They are prone on a physical level to respiratory congestion, to sinus problems, earaches, coughs, colds, etc. when they're young, kidney problems and other things related to lymphatic drainage and kidney function, swelling, edema, that kind of thing as they get older. So they're a watery constitution. And I have one of these. Remember I told you I had a phlegmatic thing. They have the life lessons they need to learn is I should serve from strength, not from weakness. It's okay for other people to have problems. I don't have to fix them. I can be understanding of other people's problems, but I don't have to fix them. They have some responsibility to fix themselves. I'm responsible for my life. Other people need to be responsible for theirs. I can be empathetic, but I shouldn't be overly sympathetic. Sympathetic is feeling sorry for people, like you've got to rescue them. I can offer support, but other people need to do their part. Those are the lessons this person needs to learn. This is the thing that balances out and makes that trait that they have useful without it throwing them so far out of balance that it makes them sick and causes them problems. So me having this problem, the first plant I learned to identify was yarrow. The first plant I tried to use was yarrow. I always had this attraction for yarrow. There was something about yarrow that I just was drawn to the plant. I loved the smell of it. I didn't like the taste of it, but it was just something that intrigued me as a medicine. Then I got the FES guide when I learned about FES flower essences, and I read yarrow. And I recognized I was I needed yarrow as a plant to help me in my personality balance. Matthew Wood says yarrow is for the wounded warrior and the wounded healer. Because not only does it help heal wounds, see, a wound is where something has come in and broken your boundaries. It has broken the barrier that defines you. And on a emotional personality level, that's people invading your space, invading your life, over controlling you, entering into the space that's not theirs. That's being wounded. Yarrow heals wounds on a physical level, but it also heals the wounded on the emotional level. And I started with this one because, as I said, many of the people I've seen in natural healing over the years are wounded healers. They're phlegmatic personality types who have this need for nurturing within themselves, and so they give that nurturing away to others. That so there are people who tend to be rescuers, feeling overly responsible for other people. And what yarrow does is it heals their ability to maintain a healthy barrier, to have a little thicker skin, so that they don't feel overly responsible for other people's problems. They can sense what is my responsibility and what is not my responsibility. In other words, there's a healthy boundary between me and other people, which is part of immunity, is to have a healthy boundary so that they can allow other people to learn their own life lessons. I used to always just take on everybody's problems and feel like I had to fix it. I took yarrow flower essence for 3 days and I have never had to do that since. That plant taught me how to start having boundaries with people. And I've used that white yarrow and this pink yarrow and a formula over and over again for many people who have the same problem, and I've had them all report excellent results. The pink yarrow deals with the more emotional side of this, which is where you are letting people's emotional energy into your personal space, so much so that you can't differentiate what are your feelings from what are the feelings of people around you. So again, there's a boundary issue here. And you can actually become physically ill because you're absorbing this negative emotional energy from other people. It helps you create, again, a clear boundary, a recognition of what is and is not my stuff. Okay? There's my stuff and there's your stuff. I can, because I have my stuff, I can be understanding you have your stuff and I can have that, but I don't have to feel responsible for fixing your stuff. I'm responsible for fixing my stuff, you're responsible for fixing your stuff, and I can help you where possible, but you also have to do the work yourself. Empathy is good, but I don't take on the emotions of others. Fantastic example of what I'm talking about as constitutional remedy. Now let's look at another one. These are called in contraction furrows in iridology, and they're called rings of achievement in rayet iridology. These concentric circles running around the eye, you see them right here, okay? And what this means is on a physical level, this is a tendency to neuromuscular tension, to cramps, to spasms, to tense muscles, etc. Headaches cause, tension headaches, all these kind of things. On an emotional level, these are people who are driven to achieve, who basically over busy themselves in activities and tend to take on more projects they can handle and get caught up in so many things because they can't sit still. They feel like they've got to constantly be busy. They're too hot. They have this air fire energy that they're just overstimulated in terms of needing to do things and move and be on the go all the time. Now, they can be wonderful accomplishers. Okay, so in other words, they're kind of a sanguine caloric personality. Okay, they're on the side of being, very outgoing, very driven, etc. And they can be a little more on the empathetic side or a little more on the task side, depending on what other things you see. But they're very driven people. So, what are the life lessons these people need to learn? Well, one is I can achieve more if I stay relaxed than I can if I get tense and upset. I'm a human being. I'm not a human doing. All right. It's okay for me to relax. I don't have to be busy all the time. I once in a while I can take it easy. Activity and achievement must be balanced with rest and exercise. Sometimes it's okay not to do anything. Those are life lessons they need to learn. Now you can put this in words and they'll never learn it. Because why? Because their innate tendency is to do this. They need something that is going to teach them internally how to sense this. Understand? And that's either by hanging around people who know how to relax or by using plants that know how to relax and be playful. And one of the plants that's good for this is dandelion. Dandelion is an interesting plant because it is very persistent, very moving, a survivor, but it is playful at the same time. If you look at a field of dandelions in the spring, there is something, and you're not worried about them as weeds in your lawn that your neighbors are going to complain about. There is something delightful and beautiful about dandelions, and especially when, as a little kid, blowing the seeds and scattering to the wind. And people spend a lot of time and money trying to get rid of dandelions, and yet they just go with the flow of life and drift their little seeds on the wind and just you can't get rid of us. We're here to stay, you know, so they can go about surviving in a more relaxed way. So dandelion is for people who over strive and over regulate their lives. They plan, they take on, like it said, too many activities, and they need to become more relaxed. They need to become more centered. Instead of being out there putting out the fires, they need to be able to come in, quiet themselves, get in touch with their solar plexus, the color of which is yellow. And remember on the tree of life I showed you, that corresponds to the area where the body, mind, and spirit come into harmony or balance. Dandelion is one of the remedies for balancing this and integrating the solar plexus, allowing a person to act on life instead of constantly be reacting to life, and do so in a more controlled and free-flowing way. It also releases a hiatal hernia, which is helps release hiatal hernia, which is one of the things that is caused there. Willow is another example because people who've suffered adversity and misfortune can feel like life is unjust, and they become bitter and resentful, and their personality becomes stiff because they can't allow themselves to move. They develop this tension in their body, often arthritic tension or muscle aches and pains, because they have just basically are holding on to this, anger and resentment and everything in life, and can't let go of it. They can't release it. They have this drive inside of them, maybe for revenge or this bitterness about life. So if you look at willows are very flexible. They bend easily. They're a more watery plant. They grow on the banks of streams. They represent this ability to bend without breaking, to yield, to allow yourself to get over it, move on with life, to restore this flexibility into your personality and your body, despite the hardships and injuries and setbacks that you've had. So, just for those of you who haven't heard me talk, this is how I actually see herbalism. I am constantly looking for this stuff, and other people who recognize this and have written books and things about it, to try to get these correlations, because the herb contains those energies, not just the flower essence. Now, the radial furrows are actually these lines like spokes of a wheel that come out. And what I've observed is people who have both radial furrows and contraction furrows, like this eye does, are particularly restless. I've seen they're the people who are they're in your office and they're tapping their fingers or wiggling their toes or because they just cannot sit still. So they've got this tension, but they also have this drive going. And what I learned from Dorothy Hall, an Australian naturopath, this is not from Radiant Iridology, is that these are like tendencies to self-criticism, to self-defeating mental attitudes, to being overly harsh with yourself. So this, what I found is this person is very self-critical, and therefore their hard driving activity is arising from their trying to prove to the world that what they believe about themselves isn't true. If that makes sense. Inside, I believe I'm this, person with all these false feelings, blah, 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 but outwardly I'm trying to prove I'm not. Okay? So rather than sensing their own self-worth, they're trying to prove it to the world, which can make them very restless, striving and driving all the time. So here's a plant that helps with that, which is pine, which is one of the Bach flower remedies. Pine is for people who suffer from excessive guilt, self-criticism, self-blame, and can't accept who they are. It helps them forgive themselves and let go of things, help people get things off their chest. So part of the ability to be who we are, we express as being able to breathe freely, to have this sense of freedom in the way we breathe and the way we move. This is an air-like quality. And when the opposite is to feel stifled, to feel smothered, to feel like I can't breathe, I've got to, I'm struggling to exist, I'm struggling to survive. So basically, this says I'm not responsible for the abuse I've suffered. The person who is the abuser often makes the person who's the victim feel like they deserved it. It was their fault. Well, this is like, I'm not responsible for what you chose to do to me. Okay. And I have a right to let go of this, to not accept that unfair guilt and shame and breathe freely again. By the way, remember that I talked about in aromatherapy, pine is up in the vaporous, airy quality. Remember this opening and helping to, and it's in the realm of energy where it's opening up and now starting to contract and empty out so that it can release the buildup of the tension and problems of the past and let go of all of that that's being held on to. And if you look at those, this eye pattern here, it's like there's this inner tension and it's blocked. There's this, like it can't come out. It can't get to the surface. It's blocked from expressing itself. And so it basically builds up all this inner tension in the person. Another one is, this one is a good one too, sagebrush, one of the artemisias, which is for letting go of old baggage, releasing pain from the past. Sagebrush, grows all over the place out in the deserts out here where we live. And so it grows in this kind of arid climate, but it just clings to life. It's a purifying herb because the wormwoods, the bitters represent self-purification. The bitter experiences of our lives are like the bitter pills we sometimes have to swallow, also have the capability of purifying us, helping us let go of what's real, of what's illusionary, and clinging to what's real, and getting rid of, say, the dross in your soul. So sagebrush can say, sometimes life is hard, it can even be bitter, but I can let go. I don't have to hold on to all of this tension and stress and all this garbage from the past. I can let go of it. I can be okay. I can move on. I could hold on to life in spite of the things that I've experienced. And of course, I'm obviously going over this, pretty fast. This lipemic diathesis or lipid ring is this whitish ring on the outside of the iris, called in the Radiant Iridology a ring of determination. This is an acquired iris sign, which indicates a determined nature. This will often develop, this usually develops as people get older and they get more stubborn. And it will often develop in people who have been more phlegmatic or more, tolerant in their personality as kind of a compensating mechanism to make them a little less yielding and more determined. But it can also be a sign of hard-headedness, inflexibility, and rigidity, which you see often happening as people get older. They often, become more rigid and dogmatic in their ways and so forth. This is a very choleric sign. In fact, if you see it, your person either has developed a more choleric personality that had a more choleric personality to begin with. So as we become more hardened, we lose the ability to be compassionate. And we can become also stubborn, inflexible, and set in our ways. But it is possible to have a strong will and remain compassionate to others, keeping the heart open. So the life lesson is, how do I keep my heart open to others, still have empathy and compassion for them, but have the capacity to say no and be firm and have appropriate boundaries and have control of my life and let other people have control of theirs? This is the struggle of what's going on there. So one of the remedies that's one of the very best for opening the heart back up when it's been closed down due to, the pain and everything that's happened in the past, and people are becoming more rigid and less empathetic, and everything is rose. Rose is the remedy I find more than any other, opens the heart to be able to accept love. By the way, I could talk for a long time about the idea of hardness of heart and how it's related to heart disease and because the hardened heart is more prone to the heart attack because it lacks flexibility. The softened heart can change its vibratory frequency, adapting better to what's going on around in the environment and everything, but the hardened heart can't. And it can become so brittle that it basically kind of breaks down, goes into spasm and has the heart attack. So softening the heart, helping a person grieve, let go of their pain, bring their circulation out is really good. It's the idea that I can open my heart to the beauty and pleasure of life. I can take time to smell the roses. Rose sits on the floral side of the aromatherapy wheel, remember, from last lesson? So it's opposite of the fiery, choleric personality, and it's the one that is going to nurture that inner need for feeling loved. And it's interesting that Bach, who developed the Bach flower remedies, was actually a little bit of a choleric himself. Maybe a and he one of the first this is one of the remedies he developed. He was actually impatient, which he developed patience for, but this is another one. Vine, which is the grapevine. If you've seen wild grapes, they grow right over the top of everything. They just grow up into the trees. They grow up over the bushes. They will, and yet they produce these wonderful, sweet, juicy fruits. So they produce good results, but they can be a little dominating and tyrannical in the process. So vine is a flower essence, the grape, which by the way also is good for counteracting and preventing heart disease. The grapes, I mean, like the grape seed, the antioxidant benefits of the grape skins, and etc. All a little bit of even wine has been shown to reduce the risk of heart disease. So grape has a real capacity also for aiding the heart energy, the softening of things. But grape is for the dominant choleric personality who needs to learn to serve from love, not from smothering other people. That he needs to understand that a good leader cares for the feelings of their followers. We're getting close to the end here. Scurf rim, ring of purpose. This is this dark circle at the periphery of the eye. This black circle, it's more prevalent in this eye. This circle. This is a person who has a hard time, senses they have a destiny or purpose, but is having a hard time expressing it, bringing it into the world. They're kind of hiding who they really are behind a mask or a false front. Because they're afraid to put what's really inside of them out on the table. They're unable to take this sense of life purpose and manifest it into something meaningful. This is their struggle in life. So their life lessons are, I am unique and important, and God has a purpose for me in my life. I don't have to understand my purpose fully. Right now, I can start to just try to do what's in my heart to do and let it out. Let myself be me. I can express my genuine self to the world, and those who like me will like me, and those who won't like me, well, that's okay. So, blackberry, if you've ever seen a blackberry bramble, is this just tangle of, you know, things growing all over the place, just invasive, but again, producing really nice berries. But BlackBerry has an inability to connect with the will, to basically express the will through setting goals and following through to bring them to fruition. So the nature of the BlackBerry as a flower essence is to basically help a person organize their thoughts and goals and turn their dreams into reality by creating goals and following through with them. That's the life lesson of BlackBerry, which is going to help the person with the scurf rim. But even more than that, if the person with the scurf rim has this really cheesy, like smiley, bubbly, kind of sanguine personality, um, you'll see that as kind of their manifest reality. But if you feel their pulse, it's tense and wiry because they're all wound up inside. Which, by the way, this is a perfect description of this person right here. Notice they have the radial furrows and the contraction furrows as the tense wound up person. But because of the scurf rim, they might appear completely relaxed and happy and social on the outside, and you can't see the pain that's going on underneath. And that's agrimony. Agrimony is for hiding behind a mask of cheerfulness, unable to acknowledge or express one's problems or be vulnerable to others people's, and sometimes you can't even admit it to yourself. You have difficulty being genuine with other people. You always have to be nice. You always have to be smiley. You also have to be cheerful. And it's like, I don't have to put on a show for other people. It's okay to be who I am, to be who I really am on the inside. I don't always have to be smiling. I don't always have to be happy. It's all right, the fact that sometimes I'm sad and sometimes it hurts, and sometimes I'm angry. Just a few more here. The stomach zone, which is this inner ring right around the iris. This is called the ring of perfection in radiant iridology. This is the tendency to be a perfectionist. I have one of these. There's a right way to do a wrong way to do things, and I want to do things right. Okay? Which makes you prone to excessive worry and concern over your performance. Like, am I doing it right? Am I doing the right thing? Am I blah, 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 blah? Okay. And that worry and stress causes problems in the stomach, because it's the stomach zone, because then you get indigestion because you're always worrying. You can't relax. You can't just like, okay, that was good enough. I'm fine. I did it. I can let go of it. So the life lessons is that perfectionism can stand in the way of forward momentum because you don't finish things because it's not perfect. It contributes to excessive worry and concern that inhibits your actions because you may not get started because you know you're not going to be able to do it perfectly. So you have to learn that there's a point where things are good enough and it's time to move forward to the next thing. And I don't have to worry about everything all the time. I just do my best job and that's good enough. A couple of potential remedies for someone with this problem. One would be filaria or stork's bill for people who nitpick over small details and can't see the bigger picture. The lesson of this one is don't sweat the small stuff and see the forest as well as the trees. And vervain, which I'm not a vervain person, but I worked with a vervain person. Man, these people are passionate, idealists, but they have this tension because they're just, their passion is overbearing. They're just literally constantly pushing themselves from within about this sense of what they need to do, and they'll get this tension in their neck and shoulders and this digestive upset and everything. And vervain is for helping them to practice moderation and balance and tolerance. Now, these remedies may not be the perfect remedies for all these situations, but I'm giving you examples of how you can see how different personality types would correlate with different plants. And I'm just brushing over this, like I say, in just very, very, superficial manner. You have the neurogenic constitution, which is a person with very fine, straight eye fibers. This is a really good example. This very fine uh, uh, eye fibers. This is the stream personality in the radiate iridology, which is a physically strong constitution with a sensitive nervous system. Action-oriented people who get things done, but often fail to recognize their own limitations. They often push themselves so hard that they suffer a nervous breakdown, which forces them to slow down. They are often mediators, helping other people to get along, but they may have failed to recognize their own limitations and push themselves harder than they really should. People with this constitution are so strong that they can think they're invincible. They have a hard time recognizing their limits and they push themselves over the edge, suffering from kind of a mental, emotional, nervous, sometimes even physical breakdown. They need to learn when it's time to quit and when it's time to stop pushing and take care of oneself. And this one is perfect. Oak flower essence. Oak trees have this strong wood, and the oak is this person who's strong. They've got a strong will, and they're very able to get things done. There's a choleric thing going on with them, but they don't. But they feel like I've got to do it all myself. I've got to. They're excessively self-reliant, and they don't know their own limits. They have a hard time accepting their own limits. So they need to have a balanced strength. They need to know when it's okay to quit, when it's okay to surrender, when it's okay to stop, when it's okay to admit to themselves, this one's bigger than I can handle. And when the oak personality, when this person breaks down, when they suffer their breakdown, Matthew Wood has a great phrase that describes that. The mighty oak has fallen. The mighty oak has fallen. That this is when oak flower essence is needed. I just put this in a flower essence blend for someone close to me who's having that problem. Olive is another one. This is also a very slow growing, strong tree. This symbol of peace and reconciliation and renewal. And people who have burned themselves out after a long struggle, drained their energy from helping other people, so there's nothing left for them. They've given it all away. According to Bach, daily life is hard for them without pleasure because they're just so immersed in the burdens of what they've been doing to care for everybody else and not for themselves. It's a symbol of healing and peace and a remedy to say, okay, I need to nourish myself a little bit. Because, by the way, an olive tree has to be very carefully nourished or the olives are too bitter to use. So if you're a person who's giving your fruit to other people and you don't take time to nourish yourself, the fruit that you wind up giving, the things you try to do for other people will be tainted with bitterness because you'll start to resent it. You have to take care of yourself, not just other people. These are life lessons, and these life lessons are connected to health problems, by the way. So what I'm saying is there's this undergirding thing of health issues that have to do with the energetics of what's going on in the person. And I think this is the last one. I think the polyglandular or flower personality type, flexible, spontaneous, passionate, decisions made on what feels right, like jobs involving creativity and self-expression, may be overly dependent on external praise and recognition, especially if they're extroverted personalities, may feel depressed or empty when they can't be creative, have a hard time sometimes sticking to things and following through, and can easily get burned out because they lack stamina. They can have short bursts of creative energy, and then they have to do more to keep themselves going. Their life lessons are, I need to budget my energy, avoiding getting burned out. They need to practice commitment follow through so that they're more steady and less emotionally up and down. They need to practice more self-discipline in terms of caring for their bodies, giving their bodies what they need to sustain itself. And the biggest life lesson is it's none of my business what other people think of me. I just need to do what I do, and if it's good and people like it, it's good. No, so I've got actually 3 remedies for this one. I've got Indian paintbrush, which is for people who are suffering low vitality because they've exhausted themselves, and they're creative people, and they need to replenish their creative forces and restore their creative vitality. And that's Indian paintbrush. And actually, this is the flower I've chosen for the logo I'm developing for Stephen Horn Creations, because it represents the idea of replenishing the creative energy. Elm, I always like this, is for feeling overwhelmed. The elm is right in the word overwhelmed with duties and responsibilities. Again, this has to do with the tree being solid, right? Trees are solid, they're earthy, they're grounded. Woody fragrances are grounding, trees are grounding. So all these tree remedies, the olive, the oak, the elm, they all have this grounding quality of bringing a person down to earth, getting them back into reality of what they need to do to take care of themselves. Elm is for when I feel like I've got more than I can handle. And it's for helping a person have confidence that I can shoulder what I need to shoulder, and I can stand up to what life has to offer me. And I also want to mention one that I haven't used very much, but is perfect for this kind of weak, called a less resilient constitution that this flower personality has, because they're more prone to structural breakdown because their inherent physical constitution isn't as strong either. So this is redwood, which is like another tree that's just tall, strong, tough wood, right? Resilient to weather and decay and everything. And so redwood is for the lack of physical strength and health issues that have depleted vitality, and especially for helping a person have the structural fortitude to stand up for themselves and have vitality and say, I can stand up tall and strong.
I hope you enjoyed this session of our Universal Energetics class. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a link below that will take you to the page on my website where you can download the handouts as well as take a self-help quiz to help you learn the material in this lesson, and also links to other resources you can use to further your knowledge on this topic. Thank you for watching.